This is brought to you by the Initiative for Equal Rights.
Chapter 4 is an on-air radio program that is focused on bringing human rights education to the average Nigerian. We're going to analyze the concept on this program, the concept of the indivisible and inalienable human rights, social justice, fairness, and equality in Nigeria. Again, today we'll be discussing the National Human Rights Commission, and doing this with me on the show today is Mr. Tony Ojukwu. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. I would like to know, what exactly is the NHRC?
Nigeria was fulfilling her own international obligation.
Okay.
Then in 1995, the government passed a law that set up the National Human Rights Commission. So exactly, the commission is there to make sure that the downtrodden, the rich and the poor, that everybody's right is protected.
Citizen.
So, and our services are free to tell you how important it is to the government, so that everybody can have access to the commission. At inception in 1995 to 1996, when we became operational, we only had 6 zonal officers. And the headquarters in Abuja. We had offices then. We had offices in Abuja. We had in Kano. We had in Maiduguri. We had in Jos. We had in Enugu. We had in Lagos. And that was it. We had only 6 zonal offices. But as time went on, these offices got to 24 offices nationwide. 24. But as at today, we have offices in all the 36 states.
Amazing.
Including the offices in Abuja. We have 3 offices in Abuja actually. The headquarters itself, we have a Human Rights Institute, which is solely for human rights training and education of people. And then we have a municipal office also in Karo, which also deals with the local complaints from FC.
Now, the commission, as we've heard, serves as an extrajudicial mechanism that safeguards the human rights of the Nigerian population. What it does is it monitors human rights in Nigeria, assists victims of human rights violation, and helps in the formulation of the government policies on human rights. Now, this is what I would like to talk about. You hear from Nigerians, and that informs new laws that have been, suggested for the Nigerian government. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
If we're listening to this radio and a radio station says somebody's right has been violated, we go and search and
immediately
and see what we can do. For instance, the social media now, we get some posts and we swing into action. We contact the police, get the people arrested, and then investigation starts. Now, those kind of things, if they accumulate over the years, it informs our engagement of law enforcement agencies. And also, every legislation in parliament goes through a public hearing, and the commission is expected to come and make its own input. So in that way, we influence legislation through our experience, because we're coming with data. We're coming to say, this is the situation. Like the issue of women now, let us talk about women. From the data we have, you can see that the women into elected positions is rather decreasing than increasing. So last year, we started working on a bill that will, try to redress that situation in helping women to get into elective offices. Because we had seen that the number of women in parliament had reduced. We had seen that because of the violence with which the politicians were going about their business, there was no level playing field for women to participate on equal force. You remember that human rights is equal, is inalienable, and it's for everyone. So if the ground is not level for everyone, then you can't have equitable human rights. So we now started looking at that, and we're also looking at the domestication of the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. We're looking at domestication of that. So this is
what does that mean?
There is a convention by the UN which has enumerated all the things that are holding women down in terms of realizing their rights. And Nigeria has already ratified that document. But by our constitution, under section 12,
yes,
it has to be domesticated for it to apply to us here in Nigeria. What that means is that if that CEDAW can be domesticated, a lot of the rights like widowhood issues, like issues of female genital mutilation,
yes,
issues of maybe domestic violence,
yes,
and so on and so forth, there'll be a framework for women to be able to actualize their rights.
Okay.
So that is a very, very important document. So it is based on the experience we're having on the disadvantages women are going through in being able to equalize their rights with that of other members of society. That informs that kind of action we're taking. That is why that provision is there, that we monitor human rights violations and advise government and influence legislation, coming from the experience of our work.
But just to put it out there, this is chapter 4 on Women Radio 91.7. It's just 14 minutes past 3, and we have been speaking on quite a lot, talking about the National Human Rights Commission, of course, with the boss himself right here in the studio. In spite of government efforts, discrimination against women is still very rampant. You spoke about female genital mutilation. We still even have child marriage. We have, the harmful widowhood practices, and basically not enough legislative framework to encourage young girls in school. There is lack of access to education. People would say, of course, school is open to everyone, but if there isn't a level playing ground, say for example, if universities are whittled with sexual harassment, women would drop out of school.
Women are a vulnerable group. They're a very vulnerable group. Children, women, persons with disabilities, older people. But the aspect about women vulnerability is so key, because if you empower women, you've really empowered 50% of the population. So it is key to make sure that women are not so badly disadvantaged for the development of the country. It is very, very critical. It is we have identified this as a major area we need to put our energies, and we are leaving no stone unturned to do that. Now, that is why what has also informed our programming in terms of making sure that the issue of sexual and gender-based violence is no longer going to be swept under the carpet. Because we've had a situation where it was becoming as if the society was not tolerating it. It was normalized. It was normalized. You can abuse a woman, a husband could beat up the wife, and then if you take it up, they will say, this woman, you are going to take your husband to court. And this was going on and on. And now you can see it has gone into the young people thinking they can just attack young girls, and they feel nothing will come out of it, because they have grown up in a society that seemed to have gradually condoned abuse of women, harmful practices on women. So the young people growing up and now translating that into sexual harassment in the schools, in the churches, and so on and so forth. So we think that this cannot be allowed to continue, and that is what is behind that for the first time that a national institution is embarking on public hearing on sexual and gender-based violence. Already we have done in 2 venues. We have done Abuja venue, we've done Lagos venue. By the end of January, we will go to Owerri venue. And we have venues. We are going to go to Benin, we are going to go to Kano, we are going to go to Yola, and we're going to go to Abakaliki, and even Uyo. So we're going to have about 7 or 8 hearings all over the country to make sure that every part of the country has a feel of this sense of redress, of this sense of accountability, so that it is no longer business as usual. We will develop guidelines that will help to protect women in churches, in public institutions, in workplaces, and so on and so forth. So it won't just be that we'll do a public hearing. We'll leave some legacy so that moving forward, It will be integrated into the education in the public institutions. It will be integrated into the workplaces. It will be integrated into the churches, even in the homes, even in private homes. We are drawing up guidelines that will, so that people who are living with other people's children, people who are living with helps, and so on and so forth, because these are all vulnerable persons that have been exploited along the line because of the weakness, because of the handicap, and so on and so forth. So we are looking at it holistically, and also the issue of task forces, because task forces at times, the way they operate, you don't even understand whether they are really acting to enforce the law, or whether they want to take an advantage on women, because they go along the streets and innocent people are arrested.
Yes.
Now they are
like
not,
the case in Abuja.
Like the case in Abuja.
Okay.
They get to the police station. Nobody is charging them for anything, but then the police officers attack them and now sexually exploit them. So now you start wondering, what was the main purpose in the first place of arresting them? Was it to get some cheap pool of women so that you can now prey on them, or were you really trying to enforce the law and protect the society? So these are issues we want to deal with once and for all, so that it will no longer be business as usual.
It helps to know that at least one part of the government, one parastatal at least, has the back of women when it comes to their rights. So let's talk about all the things that the NHRC can deal with.
The backbone of our work rests on Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which is the fundamental human rights section. And under that Chapter 4, you will see things like, of course, you mentioned the right to life.
Yes.
You see things like the right to fair hearing.
Okay.
The fact that if anybody is standing any charges, or there are any issues involving any person, you must hear from that person. You must give the person opportunity to air his own side of the story, and also the person should have an opportunity of a lawyer to defend himself. You can even see this in the public hearing we're having, that both complainants and alleged violators are entitled to come with their lawyers
to defend
themselves. But if even where they don't have, the commission, the panel has both in-house counsel and external counsel that can help complainants or alleged violators to present their case, that they are not prejudiced in any way. Now you have issue of discrimination, which is one of the rights that has badly affected women. Women are highly discriminated against.
Yes.
Even in terms of employment. There are certain terms of employment that come out, they say, this one is not for women.
Or married women, or pregnant
women, and all that kind of thing. These are subtle areas of discrimination that keep disempowering women. Then you have the issue of maybe things like property, acquisition of property.
Yes.
You have a right to property.
Yes.
It doesn't say a woman or a man. And you have seen so many customs that will say that women are not supposed to inherit or acquire property.
Yes.
Luckily, recently the Supreme Court has given landmark decisions, which has made it possible for women in several communities now, especially in Igbo land. Also, they have the rights of children, which is a major area of our work, because the family is a very important sector of society.
Yes.
If the family is not in order, then everything goes awry, kind of. So children have rights. They have a right to education.
Yes.
They have a right to life, and they have a right to development.
Okay.
So in most families, we have realized that due to economic situations, such rights as provision of shelter for children, provision of necessaries, provision of clothing, provision of food, and even access to education is a big challenge. So these are areas, and also more because of the nature of our tradition here. Most times children are not consulted in things concerning them. The older persons take decisions for them
on their behalf.
Even giving children in marriage underage children can be given in marriage without their consent and all that. So all these are things that are not right.
Okay.
You know, so right now we are focusing in the area of rights of children. You remember there was the Convention on the Rights of the Child. That convention, just like we are talking about CEDAW, that convention was domesticated in 2003. So we have the Child Rights Act now.
Yes.
But the Child Rights Act and children issues are things which are also within the competence of states.
Okay.
So outside the domestication of the Child Rights Act at the federal level, the different states are being encouraged to also adopt the Child Rights Act.
Honestly, the program has been quite the revelation. It's easy to see that things don't work in Nigeria, but you know, when we have institutions that work, it's important that everyone knows about it. And again, I mentioned earlier, we reached out to a number of people and they're not quite sure how to even get in contact or further educate themselves on human rights, issues of human rights. I mean, that's why we have programs like this. That's why you sensitize. That's why you're going around Nigeria having these hearings. So before we let you go, do you have any advice for people? What would you tell Nigerians in dealing with human rights, the best way to go about it?
You have to speak out, because if you don't speak out, it's difficult to get help. Yes, we can on our own without any report swing on any violation of human. But that is when we have heard about it. You are the best person who can protect your rights. Now we have told you, if you have any right challenge, you can complain to us. We are in every state capital. I believe the future is getting better. It's getting tougher for people to get away with human rights violations.